Hello, everybody. This is Paulo Arias with International Relocation Partner. And every week, we're trying to bring value to you guys and interviewing, I'll call this expat leaders, popular leaders within the expat community. And this week, we have Jessica Ramesch. Jessica Ramesch, I'll let you introduce yourself in a minute and give us some background. But I like to also say I know Jessica for I'll say about 4 years when they first invited me to be part of the International Living Conference in Panama. She's a writer, editor for International Living magazine, and she's got a lot of good information to provide to the expat community who are looking to move abroad, mainly to Panama, but she also writes and covers many other destinations. So I'll let you introduce yourself and say hi.
Thank you. Well, it's great to be here with you today, Pablo. As you said, I am International Living's Panama editor. That means I spend most of my time writing about and speaking about my life in Panama, what it's like to live here in an expat community, how to get residence, all that good stuff. We try to cover every single question you might have about moving abroad, and we have all that information on internationalliving.com. So please check it out, whether you're interested in Panama, Costa Rica, or some other country. And I'm just here to answer some questions and hopefully give you an idea of what it's like to be an expat in 2022.
We both have lived in different countries. I lived in the United States almost a decade. This is where I learned a little bit about the culture, how to interact, and how to service my customers. I also lived in Panama for a little bit, and now I'm returning to Panama for the next 2023. And I also, of course, Costa Rica. I'm a Costa Rican, but I also had to travel and visit and partially live in El Salvador for a little bit. And it's every time you go into this process of living into another country, there's a lot of questions. It's a lot of questions. And this is why it's important to do your research and to try to get good information, because there is a lot of bad information as well. Can you tell me about your experience of being an expat? And I know you lived in different countries, but just tell us a little bit about it and how is that transition every time you move abroad?
It is a transition every single time. Adjusting, adapting to a new culture is always incredibly fun and exciting, but there are also always frustrations and challenges that you have to deal with as well. And I feel like a well-prepared potential expat is going to look at both sides of that coin, look at all the exciting things that you're going to learn, but also understand that there are going to be some challenges. Having grown up in the US when my family moved to India for a little while, that was crazy. I was very, very young, and it was such a huge change that after that, moving to Panama seemed quite simpler, easier in a lot of ways after that, the big shock of India. But it always is a transition. Even if you're moving from one city to another in the US, you've got to develop a new network. You've got to find a new doctor and a new veterinarian for your pets and all that good stuff. So it's really not that much more difficult when you do the move abroad, particularly if you have good resources. And as you said, there's a lot of great information out there on internationalliving.com. For certain, but there's also a lot of incorrect, bad information out there. So going to a source that you trust is so important.
See, and I like to say, on this particular point, and I noticed this, there is data, information that is facts, and this is the data, this is the information, and there is also opinion. And I do notice there are a lot of people that write. They have blogs or they just comment in Twitter or Facebook groups, and they provide their personal experience. And what works for you may not work for me. And I do think we have to be careful. If you're looking to move abroad, look for data. Of course, get feedback and opinion, but understand what is the difference. Understanding what is the difference could make a could make a huge difference on your approach. Versus what's data, knowing this is the requirements, 1, 2, 3, knowing this is going to take at least a month or 2 months or whatever it may be, knowing that you need to be careful with this legal stuff. That's data versus somebody that says, yes, I moved to Panama and everything was so easy or everything was so difficult. It may be that it was so difficult because you took the wrong decisions or because you have, met somebody or hire your taxi driver as your real estate agent. This happens in Latin America. I don't think this happens in the US or Canada, but the taxi drivers are real estate agents sometimes. So be careful with that, I would say. Now, I noticed too, and I did some, did a little study. I went to the magazine, I looked for Jessica, and the, you speak three languages,
Uh, I,
kind of
s-
like.
I speak French. I speak Spanish, obviously, living in Panama. I speak French. I speak a little bit of Italian, and I've studied very, very little German, Japanese, and Portuguese, but I wouldn't say I speak those. And I have a lot of Hindi words from my time in India, but I wouldn't say that I speak Hindi by any stretch of the imagination. So I enjoy languages and I like etymology and that sort of thing. But I didn't think I wanted to learn any languages. When I first came to Panama, I thought learning Spanish was going to be a real drag and really difficult. And then it turned out to be this wonderful thing that set me on this path to dabbling and learning other languages.
Now, and I ask you, want to touch this point because obviously, when you're moving abroad, Spanish or another language may be a big challenge. And do you feel this makes any difference by you learning Spanish? How long does it take you to learn Spanish? Is this making a big difference on your journey? Make it easier? I'll say it will make a lot of things easier, but I like to stress the point. It is important.
It is important. The more you learn, the richer your experience is going to be. And everybody learns at a different pace, and that's absolutely fine. I think you know as well as I how wonderful people are in both of our countries. And when you show that you're trying, even if you're making mistakes, particularly here in Panama, Panamanians love it when people try and they love laughing at people. You got to be able to laugh at yourself, make mistakes, and that's the way you make friends here. And I definitely learned to laugh at myself. People like to tease, and that's how you learn. So as long as you show that you're trying, you're going to get smiles, you're going to get help, people are going to like you. So the more you learn, the better, but everybody learns at a different pace, and that's absolutely fine.
So, but Coronado is beautiful as well. I mean, for people that do not know Coronado, it's only about an hour and a half from Panama City.
Yeah, I mean, right now, because of roadworks, an hour and a half, really, when there aren't any roadworks like there are right now, it really is an hour's drive from Panama City. I've done the drive so many times. And so I still have access to the city. I still see friends who live in the city, and many of them have homes in Coronado that they come to on weekends and on holidays. So I see them here as well. And this is home to one of the friendliest, most active expat communities you're going to find anywhere. And that is important to me because I speak the language and I have a lot of friends who are Panamanian, but it's also really nice to have that expat grapevine, people that you can commiserate with in your own language sometimes, people that you can ask, okay, when you moved out here for the first time, which doctor or dentist did you go to, or which vet do you prefer? It's really, really nice to have both.
Yeah,
One
and Coronado,
and one in the expat. Yeah.
and I would say Coronado has a little bit of everything from banking, from restaurants. Of course, you have the beach and beautiful ocean views, good places for you to, go and eat, and an expat community. And I do see that there is an expat community that gets together, I believe, monthly.
There are so many events here, Pablo, I can't even keep track of them. And I'm looking at the ocean this is my desk where I work every day. And I'm looking at the golf course and the ocean every single day. But there are so many activities. I can't keep track of them all. Everything from pickleball to live music, you name it.
Yeah, and it's I wanted to bring something else before we finish because our time is up. But I always wanted to give, and this is for my customers and my audience. I always wanted to give, what to be careful, and I do. I even make a little series of Panama horror stories in my time in Panama. Every time I got stopped by the police for a silly thing, things like that. So I wanted to ask you, if you have a regret or if you ever had a bad experience in Panama, for you to share. And I know it's a negative thing, but I think also it's good for people to understand that when you're living in a new culture, it's super important that they learn about it, educate themselves, and do not make mistakes that can put you in a position of being sorry or having to regret.
Well, as I said earlier, you have to be aware of the benefits and the challenges wherever you're going to move. And that certainly is true here in Panama. Of course, I've had bad experiences. You have to expect that you're going to have some bad experiences. And the point being that the trade-off is going to be so good that you're going to say, okay, this is worth it. And this place isn't perfect, but it really is perfect for me. I've never had bad experiences with the police here. I got to tell you, the only times I have ever been stopped was because I had actually done something wrong. And most of the time I say, you're right, I am sorry. I should not have done that. I was speeding a little bit, or yeah, that light did turn red just as I went through it. And most of the time they let me off with the warning. But I'd say probably most of my bad experiences were with customer service, having come from a hospitality background when I was still living in the US. I'm very, very picky about hospitality and customer service. And I had to get used to the fact that the ideas here, especially when I first moved to Panama in 1990, were very, very different. Now we've come an incredibly long way since then, particularly in Panama City. But then when I moved to Coronado, I was moving to a more rural area, and it was like in many ways going back in time. So I had to once again reset and just continue to tell myself, this isn't Panama City, and Panama City's come a long way. But out here in a rural area, even if you're at the best restaurant in town and they have the best food worth waiting for, it might take an hour before you get your spaghetti carbonara or whatever it is that you've ordered. So, and I need to just constantly remind myself that what I am getting in return. You want to see my view here?
Of course. Let me see if the camera can capture that. Wow. That's perfect right there. I don't know. I'm still looking for a place in Panama City, but I might end up staying in Coronado. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
It's not bad.
No, that's beautiful. Adding to your point of customer service, it's kind of like the same. Costa Rica is big in tourism, so the customer service and level of expectation for tourism is really high. And living in Panama City, and this was about 5 years ago, where I spent about a year. I kind of suffered the same thing. It was a different mentality, but I learned something. And this is kind of like a little trick of myself. I don't know if you relate to this, but this is I learned to say hi 3 times. It's silly, but you get to the gas station and you want to pay for something, a little convenience store. People will be like looking at the cell phone, right, and not paying attention. And this was many years ago, and I know it's better now. I noticed the improvement. I get to say, hey, how are you? In Spanish, en español, hola, ¿cómo estás? They still on the cell phone. And then you say, the next thing I say hi, the second time, I say something like, beautiful day, ain't it? Lindo día, bonito día. By the second time, they look at you. And by the third time, you talk about the fuel price. Oh, the gasoline is too expensive. Or what is the fuel price? It's expensive. You relay with people 3 times, but the third time, the barrier, people has this barrier. Panamanians also have this barrier. They start laughing at you. You're not from here. You're a Costa Rican. And then they start laughing and making jokes about soccer or whatever. And I'll say, living abroad, it's an opportunity to improve in your, I'll say, emotional intelligence. Because it's a different culture and you need to find ways to relate to this culture. And I know exactly what you're saying. A lot of the customer service back a few years ago, it was very difficult, very hard to kind of to cross that barrier at the very beginning. You feel like you're not being attended, or you feel like people is rude. But a lot of them they don't have the culture of service, or they have not get the training that it's very normal in the US for a big hotel franchise. So that's just one of the things I do, and it worked for me. So maybe in Coronado it'll work. Say hi 3 times or make a little joke, and people will just be friendlier. Anyway, our time is up.
And it depends on what part of the country you're in.
Yeah.
No, it
Like,
depends on what part of the country you're in. Panama has so many different communities here, and it's very, very different. The Panamanian people of Bocas del Toro have their own culture. The Panamanian people of Chiriquí have their own culture. Azuero Peninsula has its own culture, so it really varies from town to town. And what I do find about Panamanians is that when they notice that you are actually from out of town and sort of maybe lost, or maybe you don't speak the language very well, they can tell you're an expat. They're so kind. They just really go out of their way. So I think for a lot of expats who come here, their experience is very, very different from those of us that maybe blend in a little bit more. And a Panamanian looks at me, they don't know I'm Indian right off the bat. They might just assume I'm Panamanian. Whereas if you walk in and you're an obvious gringo, they're so much kinder. And I think that says a lot about the personality that people here, they if they see that you're struggling, immediately there's this humanity that comes out. And I think that's what I really love about living here. But yeah, customer service, this just hasn't been a big customer service or tourism destination. It really evolved as a business destination. So you had a lot of executives coming through, breezing through on business and a different model. But like I say, we've come a long way. I've seen it. I've been here to just watch it grow and see it all happen.
and it has grown. I mean, in general, the service has improved a whole lot. I've seen a lot of improvement over the years, and Panama, for everything that has to offer, I think it's a super destination. I mean, it's got a good combination between cost of living. I'm not saying it's the cheapest. I mean, you want a more expensive place, you want to come
No,
to
it's
Costa Rica.
not. It's not the cheapest. Yeah.
It's not the less expensive place, but you have this variety of conveniences, good health, and the health system is a lot less expensive than the US. You got access to many different varieties of products, supermarkets. I would say good banking. It has been a banking destination for years, and also it's very close and convenient. I mean, it's a hub in the middle of the Americas, so you want to hop in and out. It's a flight, maybe 2 hours and a half to 3 hours to Florida. So it's got a lot of nice things. It's very stable. So definitely Panama is a place people need to check. And of course, we want to encourage people to go and read some of your articles at the International Living magazine at internationalliving.com. Thank you very much. Our time is up. We'll see you at the next Panama International Living event, which is in 2023. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.